We're talking about Witchmore, Witchmore devlog, kind of like a reintroduction to Witchmore. We're talking about 5 things. What is Witchmore? Why is Witchmore? What's cool about Witchmore? State of the game, and what's next?
You're listening to Make the Game with Matt Hackett.
All right, so what is Witchmore? Here's the short description as it currently exists on Steam. You are a creepy witch in the woods. Burst out of a bloated deer carcass, battle the undead, rebuild your home, unlock earth-shattering black magic, and explore a 2D hand-drawn world of witchcraft. I don't know, what do you think? It's tough to distill your game down to the verbs and try to make it sellable, but also talk about what you think makes it interesting. It's tough. The short description, very challenging to get right. So Witchmore has changed over the months a bit, but there are 2 core components to the gameplay. 1, build a witchy home and other cool stuff in a sandboxy world. 2, fight hordes of undead monsters in a roguelike style arena. And that's kind of how it's been from the beginning, except for the roguelike style arena part. We'll get more into that later. So why is Witchmore? There's a million game concepts in this folder I've got over here. I could work on those instead. Why am I working on Witchmore? So sometime around 2019 or so, I got the itch to learn Unity. It felt like everybody was talking about it and a fun diversion from the old day job. Here are a few of the itches I was trying to scratch by exploring Unity. 1, have fun learning a cool new game engine. 2, keep up with industry standards and best practices. And then 3, build up a workshop of code and prototypes to eventually make a game. Learning Unity was super fun. It's an amazing engine. The editor is a joy to use. And I'm happy to kind of like speak Unity now. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a wider range of developers I can talk to now. So some of the stuff I was working on while learning Unity includes Habitat, this really weird kind of voxel-ish based engine where I could build these little islands really rapidly, kind of floating continents, slabs of land. And then I even had some really terrible, rough gameplay where the chickens would kind of fight each other and resolve combat. Not a great game, but super fun to make and really fun for me to try 3D because I'm a 2D developer for the most part. I also made like a weekend, I think it was Memorial Day Jam or something. It was witches again. Here was me wanting to work on witch games. A couple of secret projects I'm not quite ready to talk about yet. There's Witchy, which we'll get into more in a little bit. But for a while, my favorite project in my Unity workshop was one called Eggspansion, inspired by the simple city builder gameplay in ActRaiser, which is an amazing Super Nintendo game. I swear it holds up. Go play it. You won't be disappointed. This was the frontrunner in my mind in the game that I was planning on shipping in Unity. But there was a problem. So Eggspansion currently sits at that perilous 90% done state, you know? It's fully playable, there's a high score, and it's like a complete game, I guess. But it's not that fun. There's nothing terribly unique about it. And it doesn't even excite me, so how am I supposed to get other people excited about it, you know? Have you been there before? It really sucks. You think you've got the right concept on your hands, so you keep climbing the mountain and you keep climbing. And sometimes you climb down somehow, and then you climb back up. But at some point, you realize it's not the right mountain. And I've found that sometimes something has to really jar you out of that just climb up state, you know? For me, it was that sobering, like, oh, it's done. Time to finish it, right? Settings, menus, achievements, configuration, a level selector screen, designing all the content. That giant wall really shut me down, and it doesn't always. If I found the right project, I'm encouraged to keep climbing that wall. Sometimes you love the project enough, or you're getting paid, right? And you just climb. Other times, the mountain tells you that it's not the right mountain. The problem with the expansion for me is it was missing some core things I really wanted to work on. I love witches, and I wanted to make a game about a witch that has witchcraft in the game. I want to make an overhead action game where you control a little avatar character. I want to make a gamepad-focused game. I really love gamepads, and Eggspansion was a click-only kind of game. And I want, as a player, to be able to build stuff in the game and have like a little witch house and little witch projects and stuff. Also, it's taken me a while to realize this, but I guess I also wanted to make a game that was in the same wheelhouse as a Wizard's Lizard. Unsurprisingly, I've got some unscratched itches left in that particular art style and that particular genre of roguelike. And here's Witchy coming back. So you might remember 7 tips from 7 days of game dev for 7-day roguelike. That's too many sevens. Anyway, I was working on my roguelike jam, Witchy, which is a playable roguelike game on itch. Worked on that for a week, and it really whetted my appetite for witchcraft. So not all was lost. I took the Eggspansion code base, which was very good to me because I had spent a while in Unity learning how to use it the way I like to use it. So I took that code and I kind of gutted it, and I revamped it to be an overhead action game, and I called it Cauldron for the time being. Soon enough, I had a brand new witch game, and I decided that I had no more excuses. I had to find a game out of this witch sandbox and ship it. It's been hard to figure out what exactly Witchmore is, but these pieces are immutable to me. It needs to be in the art style I developed while at LDG because I have to get that out of my system. I know it's not the most eye-popping art style, and it's more important than ever for an indie developer to have a really interesting and unique art style, and mine just often gets compared to Binding of Isaac. I guess it's kind of generic in that my style sort of just looks like Flash games. But I have a bunch of art I've made in it, and I like using the art style, and it looks good to me, so I need to make another game with that art style. Maybe I'll put it to bed after that. I don't know. I really want to play as a witch. Some players of a Wizard's Lizard pointed out that like Raga was the draw of a Wizard's Lizard, and that like maybe in my next game you should play as an animal. I really just want to play as a witch. I really want a pointy hat, and I want to be a bog lady, you know? And I think I can scratch that animal itch with the familiars in the game. There's all kinds of them. Ghost cat, lizard creature inspired by Raga, that's in there. As I mentioned, I want to play with a gamepad. It's very important to me. I also want a sandboxy overworld. I considered making just a game that was all about combat, but if it's just combat and menus, I start to lose my momentum. I lose energy, and I don't want to work on the game as much anymore. So I need that sandboxy overworld to kind of root the game in some sort of reality to keep me on board. Lastly, I want roguelike gameplay. Some version of Witchmore in my head was kind of just a sandbox, and it was a little more towards Animal Crossing, but less about the dialogue and stuff. But I never lost that desire to have what I was calling these little grottos, places you could find in the sandbox where you can go in and like explore a maze-like dungeon, you know, as is the typical roguelike way. But eventually I leaned towards just simple combat-focused arenas because they feel homey to me. It reminds me of the first like professional or whatever game I worked on, Onslaught Arena. That feels very comfortable to me. The genre's popular right now, or it was 6 months ago, with games like Brotato and Bone Razor Minions doing very well. And it's simpler. I think it's an easier thing to make a really good arena combat game than it is a game with a whole maze, a whole dungeon. So I know I've kind of waffled on what exactly Witchmore is, but it's got some constants, and that's good. Next, what's cool about Witchmore? I genuinely believe it's a cool game. I really do. I've poured a lot of love into it. I don't know how marketable it is. I haven't gotten a ton of excitement about it from players yet. Hopefully that's just because I got to get the demo out. But I also don't know if I've done a good job of selling what I think is cool about the game. So first off, it's a strong start. I added this pretty recently. You start the game by bursting out of a bloated deer carcass. That's awesome. It was inspired by Cannonball and Jetpack Joyride, how those games begin with a boom. Also a movie called The Wretched about witches. No spoilers, but go watch it. It's cool. One thing I think is cool about Witchmore is that it's got the simplest gameplay imaginable. I don't know why, I'm so impatient when it comes to learning complicated controls. Maybe it's because I grew up with a gamepad so simple that the games didn't even really have to tell you what the buttons did because there were so few of them. You'd literally be like, oh, there's a D-pad, that must be how I move around. And like, oh, there's an A button and a B button, G. Like, I'll just press them both and stuff happens. But when you get to modern gamepads, you can't do that as much. You'll have like, oh, you gotta hold right while moving the left analog stick. Like if your game uses every single one of these buttons, I'm probably gonna get overwhelmed. But that's just me as a player, but that does affect how I design my games. These are all the inputs in Witchmore. Menu, accept, interact, carry, use item, hold right trigger to run. That's it. Oh, and you auto fire in combat, so you don't even have to worry about that. You can play the game with one hand. Actually, no, you can't. Because, oh, you could if it was a left trigger. I should change that. Witchmore is super configurable. Of course, you can configure the keyboard and gamepad. Additionally, Witchmore features diegetic elements that allow you to configure the difficulty. If you want a chill game session, you can get it. If you want a hard challenge, you can get it. Play how you want. And of course, your witch will have little outfits and different cute hats. Fun combat. I don't know if the combat's exceptional in Witchmore, probably not, but it's a good time. I enjoy running around, avoiding monsters, charging into them, choosing upgrades, fighting the tripes, collecting gold, killing the Medusa, and then upgrading stuff. It needs a lot of work, more content, but it's already pretty fun. You can build stuff in Witchmore, which I like doing. The ability to influence your world pairs nicely with witches too. They're generally powerful spellcasters who can manipulate the woods or curse the very soil. In Witchmore, you can build a house, a mushroom garden, and rip apart the whole forest if you want to. And if you do, you'll find little Easter eggs and secrets that are scattered around for you to find. I think a big draw of Witchmore are the animal friends. Just about every game either has animal companions or would benefit from having them. Don't you think? They're great. Witchmore currently has Inky, Captain Mac, Deutschie, and Mushin. Gotta collect them all. The state of the game. So the game is and has been for months completely playable from start to finish, the whole thing. There's still a lot to do, but here's what the game needs before shipping. More content, of course, and always and forever. Play testing, and I gotta have the demo ready for that. Bug fixes, there's so many bugs. Optimizations, because I made some really bad decisions early on. And then Steam integration, which is a big piece of the pie, and very important. My wife's an expert user researcher, so I asked her about running a playtest. She looked at the game for one moment and was like, you need to fix XYZ, and listed a dozen problems that she spotted right away. So I have a lot of work to do. Up next is a massive Witchmore demo redesign, so watch this space.